Here is the pathway to total surveillance. We've already had step one. Step one is vaccine passports. We had it. We had it in Australia. It was brought in right under our very noses. It was there before we even realised it was there. And people were actively able to be discriminated against. You weren't allowed to go to a coffee shop. You weren't allowed to go to a restaurant. You weren't allowed to go to a sporting event, a museum, an art gallery. You were excluded from everyday society. Why? Because you decided yourself that you wanted bodily autonomy. You didn't want someone else telling you what medical treatment that you needed to have, that you must have, what substance that you needed squirted into your own body. That was outrageous that they did that. People actually lost their jobs over that. People are still out of a job because of that. So this is step one on the path to total surveillance. I get quite upset about it. You can hear this in my voice. I am angry about the fact that government did this to you, the people. It was wrong, but it was step one, ladies and gentlemen. Step two is to force upon you a digital identity. And they're doing it. Have a look, dig deep. Don't just look at what they're saying and how this is all going to be about stopping people from having to suffer identity theft. When did you last suffer identity theft? How many people do you know that ever have had their identity thieved? This is nonsense. It's another excuse. It's like the excuse behind CBDCs. Oh, we're doing it because of crypto. Oh, we're doing it because of stablecoins. Nonsense. You're doing it because the petrodollar is collapsing or about to collapse. And you're also doing it to institute total control over the populace. You need a new reserve currency system for your great reset. And part of that is going to be all about control. Welcome to 2030, where we own nothing and we're happy. So the digital identity system is in the throes of coming in. I believe we can still stop it. If we can't stop a digital identity system from coming into place, then I'm afraid, folks, it will be a slippery slope downhill from there on in. You will be controlled because if you do the wrong thing by the view of the government or the view of the central bank or the view of the employer, you'll be cut off. In fact, there might be some things that actually you want to do, you go and try to do, but given that it's a programmable CBDC, you won't be able to do. You want to go and you want to buy a book about the Great Reset to learn more. You might find transaction declined. Why? Because we don't want you reading that material. That material is anti-society. This is the future, ladies and gentlemen, unless we take a stand against it. And then finally, the social credit system. In fact, I got to say, not finally, it's enmeshed within the whole thing where they can restrict your money. We already got a social credit system happening, as I said, in Queensland, Australia, where teachers who decided that they wanted to exercise their own rights around bodily autonomy and stop having injected into them a substance which did not have long-term safety data. And as a result, they've had their pay cut by weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's been accepted, it's being done. The pathway, the total surveillance, vaccine passports, we've had it. Digital identity system. They've got legislation before the Australian Parliament. Look around the world. This is coming into effect. It's before many different parliaments, being explored by many different governments. Central bank digital currency currently being researched or piloted by many governments all around the world. It's already in effect in some countries. China's right down the track because they want control over everyone. But this is the end game. The end game. Total control. And we end up with a social credit system. And we become just like China. And every last vestige of Western civilization, freedoms, liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, freedom of faith, freedom of association, freedom of movement. All gone. All gone. I'll be screaming from the rooftops about this, ladies and gentlemen. I will not shut up about a digital identity system. You need to do everything to alert and wake up other people to the digital identity agenda. That is the goal. If we can't stop digital IDs, we're going to have digital IDs linked with CBDCs, and then we're going to have a social credit system. And then, as I say here, it's game over. It's game over. Good night. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Be good little boys and girls. Do what government tells you. I will end all of this because I've got a daughter. I've got a family. I'll fight for as long as I can fight, but I don't want to see my daughter harmed. I don't want to see my family harmed. I don't want to end up in a jail cell away from my daughter. But we need to cut this off at the pass before it gets to that stage. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. Take a screenshot of this page, folks. Take a screenshot. Here, I'll clear that little logo off the page so you can take a screenshot of this page here and send it to everyone you know. This is the pathway to total control, to total surveillance. Vaccine passports, done. Digital identity system, coming, if we don't stop it. CBDCs, in pilot, right now. Social credit system. You think it's crazy? You think it's crazy that we could have a social credit system? Well, we know China's already got one. Let me give you 2 factoids. You can go and look at this yourself if you think that I'm wrong, that I'm stretching too far, that this is some crazy conspiracy theory. In one of the provinces, like a state in Italy, they have already brought in a voluntary social credit system. Why the hell do you need that? Why the hell do you need a social credit system? And it's a skip and a jump from voluntary to compulsory. Governments never bring in something compulsory straight away unless it's got large-scale public support. They'll bring it in voluntarily. Look, in fact, we've got a voluntary digital identity system in Australia. You can go and get a digital identity now if you want. You can go and get it. You can go and sign up for it. Have a look at MyGov. They've got MyGov ID. That is the digital identity system. So you sign up for it voluntarily, and then when it hits critical mass, oh, you know what? We can do this compulsory because guess what? Either the majority or a substantial minority already have this system that we've set up. And so we don't need to convince them. It's going to be no change to them. That's how they do this. So a voluntary social credit system being established in a province of Italy. There was a member of parliament in the United Kingdom recently who got up in the House of Commons and he said that anyone who has a social media account should be issued a truth score by the state. A truth score. Have you read 1984, The Ministry of Truth? Have you watched the movie 1984? The one with, is it John Hunt? And seen the outcome of that dystopian move, having a truth score, a government-instituted truth score. Do you know it's not just happening in the UK where that idea is being proposed, but Joe Biden in the United States actually had the Department of Homeland Security set up this disinformation board. They quickly disbanded it after they realized that this wasn't a good look in the land of the free. But I got to tell you, all of its functions would without a doubt have been subsumed into certain desks and offices and agencies within the Department of Homeland Security. Do you know that in Australia, the outgoing Morrison government was supposed to be conservative, actually put in place a plan of giving powers to the Australian Communications and Media Authority to actually look into disinformation, something that without a doubt we know is completely in the eye of the beholder these days, to look into disinformation on social media and to crack down on these already censorious social media companies if they weren't doing anything about apparent disinformation online. Under that plan, I probably would have been shut down by now off Facebook, off YouTube, off Telegram even, because they didn't actually say that this would only apply to the big ones. This would apply to all of them. Government now imposing its will on free speech platforms because they don't like free speech, because they can brand something as disinformation even when it's not. It's just a difference of opinion, or perhaps it's even the truth coming out. They don't like that because it doesn't suit their agenda. Take a screenshot of this slide, folks. The path to total surveillance. Email it to someone you know, to many people you know, and tell them we have to head off the digital ID system because that is the linchpin. That is the linchpin towards everything, including a CBDC, which will end up being programmable to say where you can spend your hard-earned and where you can't, on what you can spend it on and what you can't. And that is the pathway to total control.